Hello again, everyone. I'm Matt Yocum. On this edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast, there's a little bit of transporter envy in the WeatherTech paddock, and we'll take a tour of Wayne Taylor Racing's new double-decker, and we'll rejoin our friends from the podcast with our Reporters Roundtable and get all their predictions for the 2026 season. But first, in the house, GTD Pro winners from Paul Miller Racing, Connor De Phillippi, and I love the fact that not only is it not your first time, it's your second Rolex 24 class win, but it came in another unique way like your first one did. So there's a little bit of commonality.
Most definitely. First off, thanks for having me. I've been watching a lot of the episodes, so it's nice to be featured on it. Second win of a Rolex 24 at Daytona, which is, a lot of guys dream of one, and to have two now, not quite Felipe Nasr by any means, but, I'll always take a second. The first one was the red flag year, 2019, when it was hectic and chaotic, and we weren't sure if the race would resume or end here. And this year, obviously, with long full course yellow, really changed the dynamic of the race and really changed kind of the role that myself and Neil kind of played in the race, just because there was going to be so much yellow. They predicted it to go on for a long period of time, and it happened literally right as I got in the car, just with our stint plan. So, kind of made for a weird flow of the race, but obviously was the end result was the most satisfying part.
So I always tell fans that there's no sport that is more of a reality show than auto racing, especially when you throw in, in IMSA WeatherTech racing, you race in anything. And you look at what we went through at Watkins Glen a couple years ago. You look at what we went through with the red flag, 7 years ago at Daytona, and also that long yellow. You got in the car. So how did that change things, the audibles that were planned? Because you've already got a plan of the rotation of drivers. So how did it change? Were there audibles?
Essentially, right as I got in the car, so Dan got out, I got in, and then I went full course yellow. And as soon as I got in the car, I realized why, because it was very difficult to see. So it definitely was the right call by IMSA and by race control. But as I did my 2 hours in the car, and eventually they were telling dad jokes, because we're like, it's falling asleep. We're going 30 miles an hour in a race car on the banking is definitely going to lullaby someone to sleep. And really the thought process there was we knew it was going to go for probably 7 to 8 hours of full course yellow. And to just do 2 hours, and then keep cycling guys through, it made no sense to wake up Max or Dan or whomever to just wake up and drive under yellow. So the engineering and the team just kind of said, okay, let's try to blow out a bulk of it with Connor, and then Neil's going to have to do the next bulk and try to give Max and Dan as much sleep as possible. And then for the last 6 hours, when it's flat out, we have two absolutely fresh guys who are rested. Obviously, we know they can do the job, and that's kind of what they ended up doing. So I don't really pay attention to what a lot of the other teams did. That was just our mindset. And at the end of the day, it was the right decision to keep everybody as fresh as possible. And obviously, being a driver, you want to go out and race and be the guy who's out there banging wheels and fighting for the win. But equally, in a multi-driver sport, you have your purpose. And in that moment, that was my purpose, was to try to just, log as many hours to give guys rest. And at the end of the day, we got to watch, so that's all that counts.
Well, you mentioned everyone was playing different games, mental games of, guess who I am, or trivia of the Rolex 24, you name it. And it was a lot of fun, but it had a purpose of mentally keeping yourself thinking different things. That way you're staying mentally sharp. So what exactly did you guys do?
I mean, we just kept doing what we were doing. We were never relaxed. Like, in those moments, it's easy to kind of take your foot off the throttle, mentally take a break. But you see guys making mistakes. I mean, not to bag on Connor, but, he blew the red light. And it's funny, I was literally on start finish as he left his pit box, and we were going the same speed. And I saw the red light because I was looking around. I was like, oh, red light. And I saw him go through it, and I was like, oof, that's going to be a big mistake. And I got on the radio. I was like, oh, who's in the 31? They're like, Zill? I'm like, oh.
Connor Zillich.
It's easy. If it's not your normal series and you're not going through the steps all the time, and you hop in, you're kind of in a rush and you want to do the right thing, and just things like that happen so quickly. So it's easy to make those little mistakes, and with the way the caution, how all that worked out, you can't serve that until you go green again. So it really puts you on the back foot. So really, at the start of the race, we said we didn't know if we had enough to really fight for the win. We knew we had like a podium shot, But we said, hey, if we have a car that is 100% functioning at the end of the race, we can beat other cars that maybe have a little bit more performance. If they're at 90 and we're at 100, it's open game. So our entire thought process was keeping the car healthy, keeping it car all together, we had zero contacts the entire race. I think we had one touch from a prototype from behind in the diffuser, but very light. So we did our job and the team did theirs, and just really proud of all of them for executing such a flawless race.
So you've got the red flag win, you've got the yellow flag win. But when you look at winning this iconic event, is there one that meant more to you, maybe even at the time, because of where you were in your career and your life, that you're enjoying more? Race 1 or race 2 win?
That's hard to pick. Two like very different circumstances, as you said. So I joined BMW. 2018 was my first season. It was my first time in the M8 program. 2018 was like a big learning year with the car, and then we weren't great first year, and then 19 we came back. And it had been some time since they won in the factory category as a manufacturer, and obviously being the guy, the next American guy that they brought in. I had been racing in Europe for 5 years, and John Edwards had been the US guy, and I kind of was brought in to kind of be his guy right in line behind him. I was learning a lot from him, and I viewed it as they kind of took a lot of risk on me, because German manufacturers, most European manufacturers, most of them take European drivers because they know the level there is extremely high, and the depth is really, in my opinion, where the difference is. I don't think the level is necessarily higher, but 1 through 30th are within half a second, whereas, some championships here is like, 1st through 15th. So you have to be that little bit extra of, perfection to get the result. And so I felt like that was the moment where, between the people that took the risk to bring me into the program, and for myself, to where it's like, this was the moment that proved that this was the right decision, and we really gained a lot of momentum after that win. I think it really solidified the relationship between BMW Motorsport North America and myself, and also the Munich side, because the way the two entities kind of operate can be a little bit separated initially. Now it's a lot more together. So I think it makes that process a lot easier. But that one made the memory books that much more special. And then obviously this one, it was my first 24-hour win as a married man, so that was amazing to celebrate with my wife, and to celebrate that was really something super memorable.
So, and it's been a wild, crazy year for you, because you mentioned a championship in another series. You closed out the year with a class win at Petit Le Mans. You got married to Brooklyn. So a lot happened for you in 2025, and the good times are carrying on in 2026. So you don't have any kids yet, you in Brooklyn. You've got 2 Rolexes. So you've kind of worked ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Because some guys have issues with, like, man, I've got to get another Rolex because I've got 2 kids and I've already got 1 watch.
Yeah, obviously, our intention is to have children at some point. I love kids, so does she, and for sure, the next stages of the future is hopefully having a family and having children together. So, the original agreed upon was 3. So obviously, once you have 1 or 2,
The pressure's on now. You've got to get the third.
I'm ahead of the game, as you said. So
Yep.
any excuse to have a third Rolex, I'll take.
I love when you talk to drivers like, well, I'm 33 or I'm 35. And people are like, wow, they're so young. And I said, but look at their body of work. Look when they started. When you start at 5 years old as a kid in a go-kart. And I love this one picture that we have of you at a little go-kart track, and it's little Connor. So what would you like to tell that little 5-year-old or 6-year-old what the next 2.5 decades are going to be like?
A lot of hard work, but I think at the time, that moment was just like, my dad and I would go to the track, and I'd literally just drive until literally it ran out of gas, and he would come drag me off the track, put it back in. And really, that was just a really nice father like son weekend activity that we did. We saw some neighbors that would drive. We had a big asphalt patch at the bottom of the hill at the end of our street, and they had a cone course set up. They'd do circles. And actually, at the time, we didn't realize it until a couple years later, but Ryan Sheckler, who is a very big skateboarder, Red Bull guy, at the time, he wasn't really as big as he was then. And it ended up being him and his brother Shane. We both grew up in the same hometown. They went to the same high school. And then one day my dad, stopped and asked his father, like, what is this? How do you get into it? And I just kept annoying my dad until eventually I did get one for my 5th birthday. And when you're young, you don't realize the effort and the money and all that stuff that it takes. You're just kind of ignorance is bliss. You're just like, I want type thing. But yeah, I mean, looking back, there was multiple points in my karting career where, you start questioning, is this what I want to do? I miss playing with the friends, baseball practice and all those things. And, my parents both sat me down multiple times, like, listen, if you want to do this, we'll support you 100%. But if we're doing this right. We're not doing it 50, we're not doing it 90-10. We're going all in. And, we can't do karting and drive you to baseball practice and do taekwondo and do soccer. Like, there's got to be a priority here. And I think the first time we had that conversation, I was probably like 9 or 10. And I think, there's something to say about that in our sport is I truly believe that, like, the maturity level that you get from motorsports at a young age. I mean, look at Keelan Harvick, right? I had a chance to help coach him at the Supernats, just that weekend. And working with a driver that young, obviously he has Kevin, who's a tremendous driver and so much experience. So his rate of maturity was probably even higher than mine, right? Because my dad was just not to call him a regular guy, but
Well, he just didn't know what he didn't know.
he didn't know anything about
Everything
race.
is new.
Exactly. And like the amount of times we lost races from chains falling off, like side pods falling off, and he'd just be like, sorry, Connor, man, like, I'm figuring this out too. Like, and that was just kind of our thing. Like, we'd lose and win together, and we'd throw it back in the Chevy Astro van we'd have and drive to the next event. And, those are just still some of the purest and most enjoyable memories I have from racing. And, karting has changed a lot since then. But, yeah, I mean, what a time in my career. And like I said, it just, looking back now, you realize how long you've been doing it. Right? I'm 33 now, doing it since I was 5 years old. So that's a long time to be.
I mean, that's a career for a lot of athletes in other sports.
Exactly.
And you look at in this sport, I mean, it's you're halfway there because you've got so much shelf life left, just because of what this sport requires, the number of events that we have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everyone always is like, oh, how long do you plan on racing? And when's the career normally stop? I was like, at the end of the day, if you keep winning and beating people, like, and you make manufacturers happy and you perform, you can go as long as you want. Look at Bill Auberlen. I mean, look at some of these guys who are, I mean, not going to call Augusto Farfus old, but he's, one of the older guys in a factory role, and he's still one of the fastest guys on our roster. So, guys like that, I look up to a lot. I've had the pleasure to be not a full season teammate with Augusto, but, we've done some endurance roles together, or he's been in his sister car at times. And, I've had a lot of conversations with him and his, his mentality and the way he trains. I mean, I would say, not to throw shade, but he's probably more fit than 95% of the guys on the BMW roster. He's just an incredible person, and the commitment he has to his job is superior, as well as his family, like a family man. He has a lot of things, attributes that I picked up very early on, getting my first chances to work with him, and you start to recognize, like, oh, there's a reason these guys have been around so long, continue to perform as long as they have, and it gives you really a kind of a target to what you should be looking like in 10 years from now.
When you look at young drivers coming up early on, it's like raw talent. There's so much talent there. There's so much energy, passion. They're learning as they're going, but you're seeing that raw talent carry them. And as they learn their racecraft from ladder system to ladder system. But now when you're in your mid-30s, do you look at other avenues like, okay, now I have to prepare differently. I've got to work out more in this area, or I need to do things a little bit differently than maybe you would have, 10, 12 years ago, just because of the age and the knowledge that you have and the mentality that you have.
Yeah, I think physically, I mean, I've trained my whole life in terms of, factory career and being fit and all that stuff. I think the older you get, obviously you start feeling it in more places. So I think your general awareness of how you need to prep your body, the areas you need to work on, especially when you go from different categories, whether it's in GTP, GTD Pro, both of those require, different forms of training at times. So I think really just the awareness factor and the maturity, like when I was younger, you'd get in the car and you get a chance to go drive the next level up, and you just get in, and the seat could be totally crap for your back, right? You could just be like in total pain. You're just like, oh yeah, it's great. Let's keep going, and because you don't want to speak up. And I always tell some of the younger guys, I'm like, listen, I know you're not comfortable in that seat. I know it's like way too big. So let's just make it right. You're gonna thank me like 5 years from now when your back's not killing you because you didn't take the time to just make it right the first time. It's easy just to kind of be the go with the flow type guy, but eventually that catches up to you. And I definitely went through that stage, but I had great teammates along the way, like Christopher Mees. We were teammates very early on in my career, and he really, to be honest, helped pave the way to get me into a factory position in Europe. And that was, one of the things. He was just like, you got to be comfortable. Go get a seat insert made. Like, we're not just going to try to share one just because you want to, be the easy guy. Like, just go to get it properly done, and that way you have your seat. Just little things like that. That again, people who have more experience than you and have a bit more maturity and kind of have that experience makes a big difference. I'm thankful to have been around people like that have pushed me in the right direction.
I always love when you see drivers of different builds and they share the car. And I saw a picture of you last year. You were teaming up with Kenton Cook.
Yeah.
And your seat cushion, the foam, it looked like it was 3 phone books.
Yeah.
And it just cracks me up. It reminded me of like the NBC Sports booth where you've got Till and Fish and Diffie that thankfully they're all about the same vertically challenged height. But if you throw somebody in there like a Tommy Kendall or whatever, it's really going to throw it off.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I've been pretty lucky having similar builds, but last year was definitely a dramatically different height difference between Kenton and I. But it's funny because I am on the, compared to him, rather short, obviously, but the rest of my build, for whatever reason, it's really just like a vertical height difference, like pedal position and steering wheel position. Usually I can use the same as a lot of people that are taller than me. I kind of have just like my torso length versus my leg length. So from that sense, it's actually pretty easy. Like when Nick Yeley and I were teammates in the GTP car, he's definitely taller than me, but it was kind of fairly okay to find a compromise, one seat where we didn't need to have any type of insert at all, which was surprising. So yeah, it's definitely, there's moments where I need to have a booster seat, for example, with Kenton, because I just need to be able to see where I'm going, because there's nothing worse than being too low in a race car.
Well, you look at yourself and Nick and Watkins Glen getting the BMW GTP car in victory lane. It just seemed like that program has been hot and cold. And where other teams, maybe and this is not throwing any shade in any way toward anybody, it just seemed like there are some people that they were just consistent with their GTP Pro. They would have spikes both ways, but it just seemed like when you guys were really on it, you were really on it. And then seemed like there might be some other places where you struggled a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that category, that class is like the top class, right? You have the best of the best from every manufacturer, from mechanics all the way to drivers and everything in between. And when you don't have your ducks in a row on a given weekend,
it really shows.
It shows. Like 2/10 is a huge deal when you're racing lap after lap. And if your 2/10 is a drivability 2/10, then that grows to half a second. When you're having to weave through cars and pass around the outside and things like that delta grows naturally. So there's different ways to be just quote unquote 2/10 off, right? And so that was part of our kind of a little bit of our struggle. I mean, not only that, we were like the new guys on the block, Cadillac, all these brands have been doing DPI, and Acura had been doing DPI, and all these people had experience.
And RLs are making the jump up from the GT, which is an even much more of an in-depth leap.
Absolutely.
Because so many different areas that you're covering.
Absolutely. So you had a lot of people doing new roles, doing them as best as they could. And it was, I think, a natural thing. Yes, it was frustrating to not be the guys dominating every weekend, but that was part of it. And that's really what made that win and all of our podiums like that much more gratifying, because you're like, we know the disadvantage that we're at, and we're all working really hard to close that gap. And we weren't just like hiring people from other programs and bringing them in and expediting the process. Like, we were really sticking true to, we hired these people because we believe that they can do the job, building from within. And that was really, looking back, something that I was super thankful for. Andreas Roos, our motorsport boss, he took a risk on myself. Even, Nick hadn't done he'd done a little bit of prototypes, whereas I hadn't really done any. So to give guys like us the chance, that was a big deal. And it really showed. Even, Jaminet and these other guys, like, they were just GT guys. And I think even one of my interviews, when we finished P2 at Long Beach in 23. And I look at the podium. I was like, we were in the press conference. I was like, oh, it's funny. Literally, almost every single driver on this podium right now was a GT guy last year. So it was just really neat to see a lot of, young guys get chances. I'd love to be back in that category just because I miss being in the top category. But it's been great to see the program continue to develop. Like their podium at Daytona was fantastic. I think there's going to be teething problems again because, WRT having that undertaking of, again, trying to find all people to supply those roles and everything is not easy. I think the staffing in motorsport in America is so much different than Europe, and I think it's very overlooked. I think the difficulty in that, but if there's a team that can pull it off, they're definitely one of the few that can do it. So I'm hoping the best for them, and it would be nice to see them pull off a solid season.
And they rented a shop right here in the Charlotte area. When you look at IMSA, WeatherTech Racing, it's like where before it was, man, tons of people lived in Georgia. Now it seems like Indianapolis and Charlotte are the two hubs. If you want a job in sports car racing, move to either one of those two cities. And that's where WRT, they are renting part of the Haas F1 campus. And so when you're coming to Kannapolis, Concord, Charlotte, you're looking at the resources, the human capital that's here, of who you can hire to help fill slots. And so they're, like you mentioned, they're building an entirely new organization as well from the ground up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this was the right location to choose from. I think the top people in the IndyCar teams and the existing other, championship teams that are up there, I think a lot of those people are so ingrained into those organizations. To get anybody to come to a program like what they're trying to build will be difficult. But I do feel like there's more people in our field in this region, and there's a lot of fantastic people from mechanics to engineers and everything in between to fill those roles. So I think it's going to be a hybrid of still using some European people, but also trying to find some people that are full-time that are in the area to contribute to the program. I mean, even one of my mechanics actually last year on the random manual squad, one of my main mechanics, he's over there now, which is great to see. It's a young guy who I think is very talented at being a mechanic like he is, and I think he can eventually do some great things. So it's great to see him also rising to the occasion and chasing his own dreams. I think it's easy to always have the drivers be the spotlight, but when you see young kids get to come up through the ranks at their own particular job and eventually, be a lead car chief or whatsoever, it also satisfies myself to see guys grow in their own kind of career path.
Quite often you'll hear drivers that are from Europe or South America, they'll move to the States to race here, and they are really challenged as far as the language barrier and trying to learn and speed up the acclimation process of the English language. For you, when you ran Porsche Carrera Cup Germany, is that when you learned German, or when
Yep.
did you learn German along the way?
Right. Yeah. I mean, really just from living there. So first 3 years was part of the Porsche Junior program. That's what brought me to Europe. And then the second 2 of my 5-year stint was with Audi. So really my last year, I was more Audi, connected to Audi. The 4th year there was kind of a privateer team, Land Motorsport, who came over and did some IMSA events. They basically switched from doing Carrera Cup stuff to a GT3 effort, and our partner, our team sponsor at the time, Monteplast, was really pushing to go to GT3 racing, and that's where they switched to Audi, and that kind of it all fit. I mean, there's so many talented people in motorsport, drivers in particular, and that I want to talk about. This is, everyone waits for their break, right? And that was it. Like, end of the Porsche Junior program, there wasn't really any space to go anywhere. They just came with a 919 car. He had Earl Bamber, Kevin Estre. All these guys had just won either Super Cup, Carrera Cup. Like, the depth was insane. And in that moment, like, I don't feel I was performing my best, and I was struggling with a lot of things, living away from home, finding budget to be with top teams in the championships I was running with. All these different factors, and I wasn't really able to race with a clear mind. I was, focused on crash damage, all the little stuff that, not to complain, but every driver has to deal with, right? And at the time, I think mentally, I just wasn't able to take the risks I needed to perform at the level. And our team sponsor and Land Motorsport, they went GT3 racing, and they're like, let's go do this. And it's like, I don't want you to think about anything other than just driving the heck out of this car. And that's when Chris Muse was my teammate the first year, and we literally won every championship that we competed in, and that's really what catapulted me and broke the next level of my career, which, here I am now. So But yeah, to answer your language question, learning German was just really living there. The first 2 years was hard because the family I lived with, they always wanted to speak English. They wanted to practice their English. I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to speak German to me. I'm supposed to be learning German. I'm not supposed to teach you English. And then obviously when I drove with Land Motorsport, Wolfgang, his English was very limited. So if I wanted new tires on a test day, like I had to know how to say like, I would like to do a new tire run. And so just being around him, being around the team who was, willing to speak German to me and help me out and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm like, listen, I'm going to say it wrong. Just help me out. If I say something wrong, just say it back to me correctly, and then I'll kind of log that. And I lived in his little hometown, which also there wasn't a lot of English speaking people in this small, it wasn't even like a city. It was like literally like 1,500 people. And so when you're around enough people that, don't really speak English that well, you're kind of forced to speak German and figure it out. And looking back, it's one of the greatest things that I take with me in my life, because I still am able to use it to today. And when I go to Germany, and I still can do German interviews when I go to the Nürburgring, and the fan base I created while being there and being able to speak German, I think really breaks that respect barrier down, and they really kind of open up to you as a culture. And yeah, I've met so many great people throughout my life living there that I can call friends. I mean, I had a lot of them at the wedding over in Europe. So it was just amazing to have it all come full circle, to be, at one point living with people and their families who, let me live at their house for free. And, 8-10 years later, they're at my wedding and I'm a factory car driver. It's really surreal to look back at it now, and to look at it from that point of view is truly special.
So some of those drivers have told me that while they were trying to learn English, that some of their friends would let them maybe say things incorrectly because they thought it was funny. They play little jokes on them as far as the language. Did anybody ever do that with you as far as when you were learning?
Not really, because Germans are so serious. So in the end, it helped me out because they're like, no, this is how you say it. And there was always a joke between, so the Swiss and the Germans, they say things a couple different ways. So the Germans always say the Swiss are wrong. And we had a Swiss teammate in one of our sister cars in 2020, that would have been 24. And the Germans say like, mehr als du, like more than you. But the Swiss say mehr wie du. And so he'd always make fun of the Swiss guy because he's like, look, even the American can speak proper German, but you can't speak German. And so, no, I had great teachers, and even every different region kind of has their own dialect. So that part was a little bit tricky, like understanding just like the comprehension. Somebody from Munich versus someone from Cologne area, they can say the same sentence, but it sounds like a foreign language. So that took some time, I would say, being able to kind of decipher different dialects from different regions.
New fans will say that they're surprised as they continue to educate themselves on the motorsports culture, of just how surprised they are of how relationships start very young and they go up to the different ladder system. And for you, one of your early coaches was Dane Cameron.
Yep.
What was the biggest thing that you learned from him that helped you, at that juncture of your career?
I learned a lot from Dane. Him and I used to ride our bikes together all the time when I lived more up in Cornelius area. And again, he was like, even to, 4 or 5 years ago, like I was still looking up to him. Like he was the prototype guy, winning championships, still wins championships. The guy is a phenomenal driver on track, a great person off the track. And, at that point in my career, I was just getting my first break into like a proper Formula car. His father, Rick, was my engineer at JDC. And Dane was kind of doing some Atlantic stuff, kind of in limbo, trying to like make everything work. And that was my first time working with somebody who, he was my driver coach, but also somebody that was similar-ish in age, to where I was like, kind of had a different dynamic in terms of relationship. It wasn't like somebody older where we're just like, yeah, whatever, old guy, like this is not a H pattern from the 80s, right? This is another driver who drives high downforce, Formula cars at the time. And so having somebody like that to log knowledge from and just bounce ideas off of, and even just little things like, he knew that young drivers, they love their helmets. So like he taught me how to heli tape the front of my helmet so I didn't get rock chips on the front. And even at that stage in my career, like I didn't do a lot of cardio. Like my workout routine was fairly basic at that point. And I remember we stayed, forget what 2 events it was in between. I want to say it was between Road America and Autobahn up in Illinois, and it was super hot. We were in Minnesota near the shop, and it was I'm a California boy. I was not used to humidity, and it was a humid, hot day. And we go for like a 10K run, or not. It was like 5K. I didn't run 10K at that time. And I remember it was my first time going for like a long, in my mind, a long distance run. And I was totally gassed with like side cramps. It's like, dang, this is what these pro guys do. Like, I got to stop this up. And so I'd say definitely early on, like, you made a lot of permanent impacts on me in terms of, expectations, what the bar is, and, things I need to look forward to and focus on moving forward. So
When you look at stick and ball sports and you'll have coaches like in baseball, you've got a hitting coach and here's a slugger that's probably a Hall of Famer. If not, he probably will be. He's got great advice to pass on, but he isn't still competing. And he could be a couple years out of, suiting up to go out to third base or what have you. In auto racing, like you mentioned with Dane, you've got people, and yourself also now, you've got people who are at the top of their game, at the top levels, and they're also coaching. So if you're a younger driver coming up, that has to be you can't put a price tag on the knowledge and the time that you're getting with someone like that to get their perspective. That's got to really help you make improvements and leaps and bounds.
most definitely makes the process a lot faster. I mean, now there's more high, caliber drivers more than ever. And, that's even something I've been wanting to get more involved with is helping some of the younger kids and start doing some coaching at that level. Like, I've been to some kart races and I'm just like, there's so much talent here. But I feel like they're starting to lose. When I watch how some of the racing happens, it kind of bothers me because I feel like some of the racing has gotten so aggressive and dirty, and I feel like as some of us professional drivers need to like step in and be like, hey, that's wrong. That, like, if you do that in a race car, you're gonna be upside down the fence. Like, guys aren't gonna just let you do moves like that. So I definitely intend this year and in future years start to try to do some more coaching with that stuff. But definitely the people who can afford it, and I know karting has become astronomically expensive, but I really wish there was a way that us as drivers could be a bit more of an easy access outlet for even just the regular kids who maybe don't have that type of resource, but be able to, answer questions or, be able to be contacted in a way that kind of works for everybody, that obviously has its boundaries, but still allows us to give back to the community and answer questions, not only just for the dads, but also I think the drivers as well, to try to eliminate. Even sometimes, you'll go to the track and you'll see that the kid is clearly not having a good time with the dad. He's kind of living his dad's dream type thing. And, I've had some conversation with that. Dads have called me and I've given some feedback, and I've watched their son, drive karts, and talented kid. And, the dad wants to do all these crazy financial decisions for his son to go race. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to give advice, but I think you should have a conversation with how serious he or she is on this before you do these type things. And I think that's definitely a big talking point for a lot of families at that stage, because it is expensive. It's an expensive hobby, expensive sport. And, those type decisions are not made lightly. I know the sacrifices my family made to get me here. And I think and know about those every day. So when I see other families about to do the same, I'm just like, make sure the conversation is had in full circle and not one-sided.
I remember a story. We went out to Little Concord, the go-kart track, the oval, and Larry McReynolds was out there with his son Brandon, and he had just started running bandoleros. And so we're out there, and Larry's like, he's crew chiefing for Dale Earnhardt. He's got his clipboard, he's got 2 stopwatches, he's doing segment times, and he's like, Brandon, you're letting off, you way too early. You gotta dive it in deeper. And he's like, Dad, I'm not getting out of the gas. He goes, yes, you are, because your segment times. And so he's going on. And Steve Park, because it's looking at the forest through the trees in a way, Steve Park goes, hang on one second, Larry. Brandon, let me ask you a question. Okay, I want you to mat it for me. And so Brandon mats it. And then Steve reached his hand inside the bandolero and he pushed the throttle another inch and a half. Because that was the one thing that they didn't go through the checklist of making sure that because he's a little guy, 6.5 years old, 7 years old, that he had the leg extension. It's just all those little things. And for Larry, he did everything right.
Yeah.
It's just one little, not dealing with an adult, dealing with a kid.
Right.
But it goes back to the go-karts, the culture, and how things have changed so much through the years. It's almost like and you mentioned it, there's a lot more dump and runs, than just bumps. And you'd almost like to see Bo Barfield go out there and do his driver's meeting. Okay, this is how we're going to race.
Absolutely.
These are the rules.
Yeah, and I mean, Bo does, to be fair, he does do like the Supernats out in Vegas, and he gives back in that sense, because I think that's why some guys will get a bunch of penalties at the big race and be like, what the heck, I've been doing this all year. It's like, well, you finally have somebody who's laying down the law and not worried about some cart dad that's going to come threaten them with a dead blow hammer or something crazy. So I do think, like, for me personally, the standard in karting has gotten too low, and even to a point where, like, sometimes Kart Chaser will post a video and be like, this was wrong. Like, I can't just sit back and say nothing. I try to at least give my 2 cents. Not that people care too much about it, but I do feel that dynamic, and people will always revert back to, yeah, but in racing, racing in Europe, this is allowed, and they do allow a lot more aggressive defending and so on over there. But at the end of the day, you're racing here, and if you look at what we allow in IMSA versus what they do in karting is wild. So I haven't really figured out a way of how I want to make that impact in the sport yet, but it's been on my mind, and I do think maybe that's a conversation now that I think about it. Maybe I even have that conversation with Bo to try to figure out how we're gonna better prepare some of these younger kids and get them to the level that they should be as they transition into all the different championships that IMSA has under their umbrella to compete and eventually be in the WeatherTech series.
Well, if you go back and maybe go back to the 80s, and you look at the age when a lot of drivers would get up to that top level, they've raced for a long time and they're adults.
Right.
And they've been adults for a long period of time. They've logged a lot of races and laps. Whereas now it's younger and younger and younger. Like, you mentioned, Connor at Daytona, and Earl Bamber was telling me that not only can he not rent a car, he can't check into his hotel room.
Yeah.
He had to sign up for him. But you've got kids that are loaded with talent, and they just don't have all the miles of experience of situation after situation. And maybe that's something that, folks like yourself, giving back, educating the kids on the right way and wrong way, how to race somebody.
Yeah, I think
Driver etiquette, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Etiquette. And I think, like you said, I mean, the process of how you move to the ladder is so much quicker now. I think looking back, that picture that you had put up was literally that I was kind of like Gen 1 of the kid kart class, like the 5-year-old class. And so there wasn't any rule book. Like, we got disqualified because my dad, we had to run the same gear. Everybody had to run the same stuff. And my dad, he was a tinkerer and he raced motorcycles, and he goes, he just had the idea, like, all right, I'm just going to pump these tires up to like 110 PSI. Circumference is going to be bigger, so we're going to have more top speed. And we started dusting everybody, and everyone's like, oh, you guys are cheating. But there was no rule that you couldn't just, put a ton of air in the tire. And so we got disqualified for spirit of intent. Now, you're not cheating. You have the intent of cheating. So there was literally rules made and produced because of, silly ideas he'd come up with. But looking back, I went through every class, every age category, all the way up till I was 15. And nowadays, kids start in karting, they get good, they're winning, and the opportunities come at you. And in this sport, the opportunities you get, as I said, everyone waits for that big break. And so when they start coming at you, you just kind of have to take it. And if you keep performing, you kind of just keep going up. And you see a lot of drivers in NASCAR, for example, I feel like you've seen a lot of names that progress too quickly and to their own demise, really. And it's a shame because I feel like, you have people who have a lot of talent and they get kind of rushed up to the ladder system, and you start to see that eventually catches up. You can hang on year after year, but by year 3, 4 of doing that, it's a sink or swim environment. And when you eventually reach the level of guys who are your same talent level, but had double the amount of time to develop, like, at the end of the day, you're gonna be more mature, you're gonna have more talent in that particular moment. And I think in karting now, you see a lot of that where guys, they rush through the classes that much quicker. They start getting opportunities from manufacturers, which is great, right? But they're missing out on the critical years of developing in karting, and they're like straight into cars. And so now they have that mindset they had in karting has now quickly transitioned into cars because they haven't really taken the time, that 3-4 extra years in karting where you develop like, okay, you're eventually going to start coming across guys that when you do overly aggressive defense, the guy that's going to ship you off into the tire barrier, and you kind of miss out on those experiences because you've just kind of won, and then boom into cars. And I do feel like that has had an impact on kind of the current state of things, where I didn't really have to deal with that. I kind of had a lot of, I mean, I karted when I was 5 till I was 15, so I had 10 years of karting experience before I even touched a car. And so I do think that played a big role in my maturity level when I transitioned to cars, and I had a different respect level for cars rather than just getting in and driving the wheels off the thing.
You're closing out your decade as a BMW factory driver. When you go back to when you got the phone call of you're going to be a BMW factory driver, what was that like? Because people hear that, oh, they're a factory driver. And there's so much that goes into
Mhm.
that role, that position, that a lot of fans never really understand. So what was that like? And what all makes up a BMW factory driver?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that day I was always sitting at the Land Motorsport shop in Germany, and we had just won 24 Hours of Nürburgring. We were leading the GT Masters Championship and really winning that race. I mean, that race, that track, like every manufacturer, particularly German manufacturers, are watching that event. And when you perform there and you win there, it has a lot of weight on it. It's a big deal. And Adam Baker at the time was the Munich boss. Victor Laloux, who's still very much involved on the US BMW side in terms of motorsport and also experimental marketing. They essentially, sent an email that they'd like to have a conversation. They didn't put what the program was about in writing, but I kind of had a little bit of an idea what it was about, and basically said, listen, we'd like to test you. We'd like to potentially have you involved in our M8 program. This will be our first like really, really big program again. Obviously, it was the first time BMW had developed a race car based on a road car that wasn't actually being sold yet. So it was the first time in history they'd ever done that. So there's a lot of firsts for them, but also adding a US guy to the roster was going to be a big deal as well. So when I got that email and I did the phone interview with Victor and we talked about it, and they're like, all right, well, we want you to go to Spain. It was in Barcelona. They were doing some testing there. The track was like closed off, security all over because the car hadn't really been seen yet. And I did the test there, and Nicky Katzberg was there. There's a couple other guys there, and I felt it went really well, but I wasn't really sure. Like, they don't give you feedback. All right, you passed the test. You're just kind of waiting a bit, kind of anxiously. And it wasn't really like my only iron in the fire. Like, I still had the option to stay with Audi, so I wasn't really super scared about the outcome. But deep down inside, I was going to be 24. I wanted to come back to America. I'm like, all right, 5 years has been enough here. I want to see my friends again. I want to have access to my family. I want to, kind of long term, I wanted my career to be back here in North America and be IMSA based. And this opportunity was like the perfect alignment, stars aligned, timing aligned, everything was perfect. And they ended up, calling me and said, hey, we want to offer you a contract and be part of this program full time. And I was over the moon. I couldn't wait to tell my family and obviously join the program, and actually signed the contract at Petit Le Mans in 2017 on a Wednesday with Victor in the BMW bus, and they actually won with the M6 there, and I won Petit with Land Motorsport and the Audi. And we kind of, oh, fancy seeing you here in Victory Lane. And we were only one at the time in the room that really knew what was the plan for next year. And then shortly after that, they announced it. So it was really a special moment. And so I hadn't won Petit since that moment. And I kind of felt like it was like a weird kind of monkey off my back to finally get that win again, because it's one of my favorite tracks and one of my favorite events of the entire calendar. So to win that one with Max and Dan this year was really special, or last year rather.
So depending on where our guest is from, Europe or South America, it's always like rolling the dice 50-50 if they've watched Bill Murray and you go back to Groundhog Day and how he relived the same day over and over. So if you had a chance, because you're from the States, so if you haven't seen this, we're really going to be disappointed. But if you've had a chance to relive a race or a day at the track over and over again, because in experience, maybe something for the first time, that win, the joy and everything. Do you have one?
One single, I would say the most emotional win. I don't know if I'd want to experience it again because the high and low, like the low is so literally had like grown men crying with an hour to go in the race. But 24-hour Nürburgring win in 2017, we had led almost literally the entire race. And then with an hour to go, we had a sensor issue and the car went into lip mode. Long story short, we did our pit stop, went out, had to come right back in off the Grand Prix circuit. So we lost, I think, like 2.5 minutes. And that was like the win evaporated right from our eyes. And me, Christopher Mies, like we all were just like distraught. Like we're just like devastated. Like this is one of the hardest ones to win, and there's a reason. And this just kicked us right in the teeth. And they ended up getting it fixed, and we went back out. I think we fell back to like 4th. Then Nordschleife is the Nordschleife. Like weather always plays a part in it. And with us now being 2.5 minutes behind, we ended up having an advantage because the leaders had just done their final pit stop and they went out, and then we came in, and right in that moment on the Nordschleife, we could see on the cameras that it was pouring down rain, like absolutely pouring down. And we had initially put slicks on, and Christopher Mies at the time was just started yelling like Regenreifen, like wet tires, rain tires. And so at the last second they switched to the reins and went out, and that's all it took. Like all of them were stuck out there on slicks for 12.5 miles, and we slowly worked our way through and took the lead and ended up winning literally on the last lap. So it was like the most wild emotional roller coaster of my life, and everybody involved in that program had been, working so hard on that. And also our team sponsor, Christian Stoltz, his like dream, one of the main reasons he was sponsoring that program was like to have the bragging rights of winning that race. And in just a second attempt, he pulled it off. And I think that was one of the best days of all of our lives. I won't speak for him, but I'm pretty sure he would vouch that as far as motorsport memories, that was by far his best one as it was mine.
So we saw the picture of the go-kart at age 5, and it's always that passage to freedom when you get your license and you get a road car for the first time and you're able to go to your friend's house.
Yeah.
And for you, being a West Coast guy, was it like a VW Bug Cow Love? What was it? Ford Courier little pickup parts truck? What was it?
I had a Mazda Speed 3, actually. I had a fairly nice car for a first car. I was part of the Mazda ladder system. So we were like, let's try to get some brownie points. We got to buy a Mazda. And I was like, I can't get a regular like Mazda 3. I think slow. And I wanted a manual. As long as I had a manual, I was going to be happy. And so we ended up getting that. And that was just an amazing car. My brother actually still owns it. It has almost 200,000 miles on it. I think it's absolutely crushing it. But yeah, that was a great car. No, I didn't have like a surf wagon or anything cool like that. I surfed a little bit growing up, mainly during the summer. I wasn't hardcore enough to put on the full wetsuit and go out there when the water was 50 degrees. We had a surf team on my high school, but I definitely was not on it.
Well, we appreciate you coming by. And I love the fact 2-time now Rolex 24 winner. And the fact that you've got the Paul Miller Auto Group. Basically, Paul Miller is your owner, former driver, current owner, tons of championships. But I love the win on Sunday, sell one of his 12 different brands on Monday.
That's it. Now it's one down, and let's win a couple more for the whole team. I'm really proud of them, and we've been looking at it as we're the U.S. team. We were against a lot of the best teams that came over, Montai, Corvette Racing, a lot of these people who have a very long list of results, and to pull off the win at Daytona was a good start.
Awesome. Congratulations. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Now for Connor and the rest of the drivers and teams in the WeatherTech Championship, the paddock, that is their home base and all the team's transporters. But this year in 2026, there's something a little bit new in the neighborhood. Travis Hogue, the VP from Wayne Taylor Racing, gave us a tour of their new double-decker.
Come on in. This is our new performance and engineering trailer. I'm Travis Hogue with Cadillac Wayne Taylor Racing. Come on in and have a look. This is our driver section. So we've built the top of the trailer to have the max communication we possibly can. So in the back section, we have areas for 6 drivers. Everybody has their own screen, laptop, and connection, but we can also close the doors and keep drivers back here and engineers up front. So as we go through the front of the trailer, we have 18 engineering spots. So each engineer, you see their names and engineers and owners. This can connect both to here, the timing stand, and anywhere else, GM Tech Center, every place that we need to communicate to throughout the race. The nice part is with all of this, communication is key. So everybody can turn around, look at each other, everybody's in one space. We don't have to worry about different trailers, different areas, it's all in one location. Up front, we have a conference room. This is used multiple times throughout the day for different engineering sections, whether that be performance or systems. They can come up here, have a meeting room, and use it for anything they need throughout the day. So now that we've been upstairs, which is the engineers and performance, that's all connected through intercoms to out in pit lane to tech centers and all of that, we come down to the actual race team side of things. So this trailer, so we've been designing it for probably about 18 months. This trailer is different than our other trailers. Most trailers you see have slide outs. This one slides up. So the whole trailer is controlled by remote controls. So everything from the lights to all the self-leveling, it goes straight up in the air, and then the top of it is pretty much level with most trailers where they have decks on it for spotter decks. That's where the height is. So when it goes down the road, comes back down, this stays the same, but upstairs collapses all the engineering decks. So there's probably been at least, I'll say 20 to 25 different versions of drawings to get where we are right now. And this is our first weekend using it. So I'm sure there'll be a few more modifications, but as we go through down here, this is the work area for it. So Sonic Tools ended up building a special cabinet for us to fit into the area because weight, size, everything is important to us. So this has a lot of electronics in it, a lot of different wiring harnesses, all of the stuff that really relates to the engineering side of the team. And then over here, driver lockers. So as you can see, very well organized, very neat. Each driver has their own personal effects on it. And as we go to the back, there's a workstation. So part of it was keeping this trailer, like I mentioned, basically around engineering and electronics. So this is a nice clean area. We've got all of our electronic and spare parts, all of our tools, ground cables, everything that we need to be able to work on the electronics of the car in this one, because most of the time the engineers upstairs are the same ones working on the stuff down here. This side has driver lockers for the other program. Since this trailer has to support both 10 and 40, all of our drivers are based out of here. So you can see this is Jordan's locker, and you can see he's got his family in there as well. And then we still had to find a place for the crew. So to run both cars, there's almost 100 people with us this weekend, all of Wayne Taylor Racing. So we have to find a place to put it. So there's about 24 different lockers inside. Each one is assigned a crew member. So all their crew gear, all their helmets, everything, and then I won't dig into it, but each one is also wired so they can charge their cell phones, they can do everything they need to get through a 24-hour race. And the cool part about it is when we designed it, we went into things like the deck height. So this matches all of our pit box stuff so that we can roll in and still tie it down just like we normally would in a regular trailer. So there was a lot of thought put into just the lights even. They've had to be flush because if the lights come down, the stuff won't fit in the trailer. So everything was thought out down to every inch trying to be used. And then back here, we needed an area for the crew chiefs to be able to talk to some mechanics or talk about pit stops or do things when upstairs, yep, we have the conference room, but that gets used a lot. So here gives them access to come, sit down, they can close the curtain, have their own area, still be able to see what's going on the racetrack. They can look on the other side and this monitor can be seen, it could have timing and scoring on it, or it can have anything we want on it from a schedule. So every one of the 7 TV monitors that are on the walls or up in the conference room, those are all controlled by one laptop, and we can put anything on any TV that we want during any time. The 36 monitors that are spread between here and out to timing stand, those are all connected to engineering computers, and there's a large matrix upstairs. So each engineer, if they want to share something with an engineer that's setting in seat number 18, and they're sitting in seat number 1, that matrix allows them to share screens as well. So engineers could be looking at something, talking through the intercom or talking to somebody, but look at the same screen together. So those matrices were put in so that we wanted to make sure that all of the performance side was as easy as possible to be able to share information. Same thing goes with the other teams we work with, but so far, the engineers seem to be happy at least. So now that our tour has come full circle, we want to have a look at some of the outside things that we have and cool features. We've got LED light strips all the way around the trailer, on the tailgate, around the sides. There's a total of about 700 feet of LED lights. All of them we can change the color on with a flick of a remote or even from our cell phone. So now that you guys have seen the trailer, hopefully you come to an IMSA event, see this in person, and hopefully see Cadillac Wayne Taylor Racing perform on track from having the trailer to help the engineers.
Time now to check in with the news dogs of the sports car world, the guys that patrol the paddock, pit lane, have all the late-breaking stories all season long. From Sports Car 365, John Dagys, dailysportscar.com, Stephen Kilbey, and the legend Marshall Pruett from racer.com. So looking at 2026, John, what do you think season long are going to be some of the storylines that you three will be following?
Yeah, I think the updates to the LMDH cars in particular that obviously run in GTP, all of the cars have had Evo Jokers during the off-season. The only car that's remained unchanged is the Aston Martin Valkyrie. That's an LMH spec car. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see how that balance unfolds throughout the course of the year. I think also the Temerario GT3, that's going to be exciting to see it debut at Sebring. Just the close competition. I think, talking to a lot of drivers, team bosses in the run-up to the Rolex 24, we've seen a lot of people talking about how the competition is going to be even closer this year compared to previous years. Thanks to some measures done during the off season with the rehomologation of the cars going through the wind tunnel and everything like that.
I want to see whether the gap's been closed to Penske, particularly like early in the season, because last year we saw them come out swinging, win at Daytona and Sebring, and operationally they were superb. They won races through strategy. Have the other manufacturers caught up? Has Wayne Taylor Racing in its second year with the V Series R made that gains? Will it use the Evo, the aerodynamic tweaks to that car to its advantage? Will WRT, with the powerhouse that it is, taken over from RLL for BMW, will they get the M Hybrid V8 where it needs to be, where BMW wants it to be? It was almost like you look at every manufacturer and there's something fun and interesting about all of them. Meyer-Shank Racing, they were fantastic early in the year. They'd had a year out. They came back. They looked like they'd never left. Will they be a big factor throughout the season? I don't know what you think, Marshall, but for me, it's just whether Penske can be overhauled really in championship standings by the end of the year.
I'm looking at one specific thing more than anything else this year, Matt, and it is IMSA. So Porsche Penske Motorsport, as Stephen mentioned, they got out to a great start. Effectively, they were playing from ahead before we even got to the half-season point. We know there's a lot of technical things that happen to try and create parity between the cars. We won't get into that, make people's eyes roll in the back of their head, but there is ongoing efforts to make sure nobody gets too far ahead. Everybody agreed. IMSA even kind of raised their hand and said, we're going to work even harder to tighten those controls and balance because Porsche did do so well. Not as if the other cars weren't high quality as well. Just let's see if we can keep this a little bit more of a fight from early on in the season. As a result, that's what I'm really watching for. What are we going to have here at this race? I want to see all 5, 6, 10 cars side by side coming to the finish line in GTP and GTD Pro. Across the classes, but that's the one I'm really watching. Can IMSA do as it's trying to do and really create that, not equality, but as much parity as possible from the outset so we don't know the finish, the ending to the movie well before we get there in October.
When you look at the fact that there's nearly 20 OEMs involved at some level in IMSA racing, and it always goes back to the cost versus performance. And it's such a great deal because you're not going to be allowed to outspend somebody.
That's why you have 20 manufacturers.
Exactly. And so I think when you look at just this season, and you touched on it, Penske last year, they started out with the 7, won the first 3 races, and nobody in the previous history had won the first 3 and not won the championship. And I really break down last year almost in like 3 chapters. You had the Porsche Penske number 7, and then you had the 6, their sister car, kind of starting to get into a groove. You had Meyer Shank with the Acura really sort of owning the summer, especially with qualifying. And then as we got in that final check run to the championship, then the 6 with Cam Jam, Matty Campbell, and Mathieu Jaminet really locked in. So is there more pressure on Penske this year or more pressure on the competition? Because once again, it seems like for the 3rd straight year, they've shuffled the driver lineup, and it's proven in the past with back-to-back championships, now going for 3 in a row. So is it more pressure on Penske or the competition, do you think, John?
I think it's Penske because, like you said, they're going for 3 titles in a row in GTP, and now they're fully focused on IMSA as an organization with PPM, Porsche Penske Motorsport, and they've arguably brought their strongest driver pairing to the GTP class with Kevin Estre and Lawrence Vanthor. They won the WEC World Championship title in 2024. They have a really good working relationship together as co-drivers. They've won some key races in the WEC together, and they've brought over their performance engineer, I believe, from the WEC in to be their race engineer this season in the WeatherTech Championship. So that shows that there's a lot of continuity within that program, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can produce in that car, especially the number 6, which is the defending championship-winning entry.
Well, and that brings up a great point because a lot of times it's like in the NFL. Tom Brady went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and who does he bring in? His longtime buddy Gronk as, an arsenal that he used to always go to. And so it's that familiarity. And is that going to be the deciding factor, with the 6, and the 7, essentially with a whole driver lineup? You got Nasser, who is the veteran. Now he's going to be a mentor in a way to 2 younger guys, Stephen.
The good thing is that Porsche has got riches in terms of driving talent, and they've got a pool of drivers. And you know that if they're making these changes, they're not just taking people randomly off the street. They've got talent that they're bringing up. Lauren Heinrich, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Julian Anlauer made a really nice transition from Proton competition, from privateer entry into the factory team last year. I think he's got everything he needs to be able to put together a full season in terms of battling for a championship. But behind the scenes I think is where the biggest difference could come. It's been an off-season, a change for Penske. They're not racing in WC anymore, and we were told, on and on by sort of Porsche Penske management that it was a big strength to their program that they had the WC effort as well as the IMSA effort, and that they were sharing data, sharing ideas. They had people on different time zones, and they've shed a lot of staff. They've got a few people left in Germany working since they wound down the WC program, doing some simulator work, having that dialogue with Porsche, but they have lost some minds. And that, over the course of a season, will it make a difference?
I'm interested to see the management changes that have taken place within Penske's organization as a whole. So Jonathan Duguid, who runs Porsche Penske Motorsport from the team side, but really big program manager for them, they've shut down the WC program as mentioned, but Jonathan and his lieutenant, Travis Law, fantastic person, they're also in charge of Rogers' IndyCar team as well. So not as much international travel now without having to do WEC and Le Mans and such, but 17 full races in North America with open wheel, 3 cars there. There's a brand new driver in one, effectively all new race engineers in there as well, and the IMSA program. And then you have what you hear about from every other team, every star player in every other stick and ball sport who's won 1 championship, 2 championships in a row. They start talking about 3rd and 4th, and they say it's just crushing. You've set this impossible standard. It'd be one thing if everything within Porsche Penske Motorsport was the same. If this was just a juggernaut rolling into 2026, there's so much change behind the scenes in the car, engineering stand, and so on, plus the other responsibilities they have taken on here, the leadership highest level in another series, plus they do NASCAR. It's a lot. So if they win the championship this year, I have to believe beyond the 3-peat and those kinds of things that they might celebrate, all the changes they've gone through, if they can make this happen under these kinds of conditions, that would be, I would say, crowning achievement of the 3.
And looking at GT racing, whether it's GTD Pro or GTD, what do you think is the biggest story for the fans to follow in 2026, John?
I think overall is just the new and refreshed cars. Like we're going to see the Temerario debut at Sebring. That's going to be very exciting because it'll be the worldwide race debut for that car. It looks very similar to the Huracan, but very different underneath. A twin turbo engine, different V8, not a V10. Lots of new developments with that car. The first clean sheet car developed by Lamborghini Squadra Corsa, because obviously the Huracan was developed in parallel with Audi's R8 LMS. So there's a lot of anticipation for that car. It's done a lot of testing in North America in the build-up. They've obviously decided not to debut it at the Rolex 24, just for a sake of, giving it a little extra time for final homologation and everything. But I'm personally looking forward to that. Obviously, as we mentioned, the Ford Evo with the Mustang GT3, that's probably the biggest Evo package we've seen out of the GT3 cars. The Ferrari and Porsche also have some updates, but really curious to see how the Ford's going to do, especially as they're the defending GTD Pro class winners here at the Rolex 24. So they have a lot of pressure on them as well to perform with a somewhat revised driver lineup as well.
See, and I love what Steve Bortolotti and the boys and girls at FAF do with the fans. They're so fan-centric, and when they're going to debut the new car at Sebring, Steve told me that they're going to have a couple different ideas design-wise for the livery, and then they're going to let the fan, once again, be the number one, and they get to choose in a fan vote what will be the livery. Of course, it's going to be the traditional FAF plaid, which everyone loves, but it's going to be a cool thing where the fans, once again, are involved. So, Stephen, what do you think looking at GT?
I completely agree about Ford. It's a massive year for them. They're developing the hypercar. They've got the new package for the Mustang. What they lacked last year was consistency across the season. They got the wins. The Mustang at times looked superb, but if the car in its current form is better at different types of circuits and throughout maybe the summer months, if they can sort of string some results together, seeing them take the fight to what we know is going to be a really strong challenge from the likes of Corvette, who we really mustn't forget. I mean, they only won one race last year, but they won the championship, and it's Garcia and Sims as a pairing.
They're a machine.
They're like two professors sitting there just like concocting this kind of full season cocktail. And I love that about Pratt Miller. I love the way they go racing, and I love the loyalty they've shown to some of these drivers. I mean, you look back at like Antonio Garcia's career, and you just think he's finished like first, second, or third basically every year since he joined Corvette in a championship. You just can't look past them when you're looking at a season, in terms of GTD Pro, and that Corvette just seems to go from strength to strength. I'm expecting a lot out of the Ford Corvette angle throughout the year. What about you, Marshall?
And there's so much depth, though, as you mentioned, the Corvette, not only with the driving talent, but Marshall, you look at just the mechanics. Brian Hoy, retired after 40 years, they won the championship. He says, you know what great way to have a walk-off home run, so to speak. But like Steven says, Ford versus Chevy, and then you can sprinkle in just about anybody else in the manufacturer lineup, looking at not only Rolex, but the season.
From our vantage point, Ford, General Motors, lifelong cats and dogs type fight. For the majority of the paddock in GT, they don't give two farts about them or that battle. So we have the fine McLaren coming back, right, through our friends at Railhead Mid-Atlantic Racing. Their last appearance with FAF in a pro-type engagement with McLaren here didn't really meet standards, not for FAF, not for McLaren, wasn't the happiest of outcomes or relationships, feelings that more could have been done. This is something that RLL knew while negotiating with McLaren, so there's an expectation for a heightened level of support, collaboration with that factory. So indeed, while it's a single car, it's a really hard thing to do to penetrate this really deep, rich GTD Pro class with a single manufacturer entry. I'm looking to them to be more engaged, more competitive than McLaren were the last time they were here. The most fun team in the paddock, that being, of course, AO Racing. We think of Rexy. We think of just all the nonsense and shenanigans that go on with that team and car in the paddock. And then they get out to pit lane, and they are the hardest of hardcore competitors. They've gone through a very significant shakeup on the driver's side. They have, and I still don't understand how, they have Nick Tandy back in a GT car. That
I mean, he's
should-
like a bulldog.
that should be illegal. Like, I'm just saying, that should not be allowed. And he's got a great young teammate for the season. Again, there's so much going on there, but don't underestimate how angry the folks at AO Racing were that last year, again, just outside of that podium finish at most places, weren't able to defend their championship in GTD Pro. So yes, Ford, Ferrari, Corvette, and some of the big names that we see, heck, they make movies about this stuff. We have a whole other portion of the paddock saying, great, we're going to ruin your story. That honestly, that's what I look forward to. I hate predictability, and I even want to see some of the small teams that we might not count in. I'd love to see them rise up and say, hold on, we're here. We're going to make you feel the pain. So on the GTD Pro side, I'm looking forward to that. Also, the Ferrari side, I do indeed love that it feels like anybody with a quality team can buy a Ferrari 296 and go right to the front. So the customer side, the manufacturer side, the semi-works and affiliated side, there's just so much great stuff going on where it seems like name the team in GTD Pro, you have a reason to fear them.
I go back to a conversation I had with Chip Ganassi 2 years ago at Indy, and he was like, everyone's talking about how, back in the golden era, it was so great. Because this is the golden era. More cars, the driver lineups are incredible. And to me, when you look at, and you touched on it, Marshall, yes, we've got the Hatfield versus the McCoys, Ford versus Chevy, but then you've got Porsche, you've got Ferrari, you've got other, folks that are just waiting to go ahead and break, their dominance. But it almost takes you back to the Roush days in the 80s when it was Ford versus Chevy, and they would just pound each other. You look at the Ford lineup, you look at the Chevy lineup, how Chevy stole Wally Dallenbach Jr. from Ford. It's to me, that makes GT racing so much even more exciting in 2025, now 2026, because it just keeps getting tougher, and the winner is going to be the fan because of the show that they're going to put on.
Well, the example here is we've got this far, we've not mentioned Paul Miller and BMW, and the Paul Miller BMW versus Corvette here was just like moment of the season immediately.
And raise a lot of money for charity, too.
We haven't mentioned Manthey. They're coming in as double WEC LMGT3 champions. They've won Le Mans twice in a row. They've got stacked lineups in both cars in GTD Pro and GTD. They're going to be a force. They're going to disrupt, I think, the sort of established order here right away. And anyone in this paddock who's not raced against them and seen the standard they set, and how embedded they are with Porsche and the development of their car, they're a team that you can see, John, Marshall, I'm sure you agree, they could come here completely blind and just pull off a result.
Absolutely. Olaf Manthey is here. That shows how important the program is for the team. Obviously, it's a different set of ownership, but it's the team that he started so long ago and being so renowned for their success at the Nürburgring and the iconic Grello livery. It's here in the U.S. for the first time. So it's a real iconic moment for that organization, and a great lineup in GTD Pro and GTD.
Marshall, you've got an engineering mind. How have Winward pulled off what they've been able to pull off in the last couple of years? There's another team that you just can't look beyond in this field. With Mercedes, with a car that is getting on a bit, they just keep pulling results out.
So as reporters, Matt, we're all impartial. The Winward Racing team is my damn favorite because of exactly what Stephen has said. What? Who you're going up against? Who have been doing this for 1,000 years?
And they're a team based way out in Texas. It's like they're on an island, so to speak, but it starts with the top.
The processing of exotic metals and catalytic converters as a business for the Ward family has helped fund this let's just destroy everybody in endurance races program they've put on. The Mercedes AMG GT3, to your point, just like that, the length of the hood, long in the tooth, but this is excellence right there. Speaking long in the tooth, Lexus, Vassar Sullivan Racing, it's another hot rod.
And they put the band back together on the 14.
Yeah,
exactly. Love these little stories where, again, Winward Racing, you say that to anybody in the world and they'd say, who? Because they don't have a long tenure. Also, being dominant in GTD, the Pro-Am class, instead of the big sparkly full pro class, prevents them from having the profile they deserve. But the work they put in, the championships they earn, the fact that we cannot go to Daytona, Sebring, anywhere without putting them effectively on our mental pole positions for victory. That Mercedes AMG GT3 as well. It feels like it was built to take home, to produce Rolex watches for its drivers. It is wild. So again, lack of predictability. 2026, I do not see this as a continuation of 25. We come here, the true calendar resets race 1, but I also look at the storylines and go, I can't find much to make me think, oh, watch out. This is just going to be a part 2 of what took place. I love the fact that we have so many things. We don't know what's going to happen.
And I think when you look at Winward, and to me, it takes on that status of what they've been able to do over a 6-year period. Because they came here in 2021, well, let's just go stick our toe in the water. And they ended up walking away as a winner. And now everything is going at ludicrous speed. All right, well, let's go ahead and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But if you go back to, I think, the biggest example of why that they're successful, 2 years ago at Sebring, didn't have a great race, crashed out near the end, and I just saw like a flash of something 2 pit stalls away in my area. I looked, and it was Russell Ward. Instead of going back and taking a shower, heading to the hotel, the airport, whatever, he's helping the team tear down the pit box. That's a Roger Penske type move. And like Penske always says, our most important resource are our people. And it's the same thing with the Ward family. And that's why you don't see people packing up and moving somewhere from Houston or from Texas to a different team. You're seeing more people get jobs there because of the culture. And I think that's something that they've built. I still think that you could definitely see 3 championships in a row with them, because it's like Ric Flair always said, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah, and Russell's developed really well as a driver. You know, look at the competition in GTD. There's a lot of so-called fake silvers out there, and he's a true gentleman driver that's developed through the years. And you know, he's shown a lot of pace, a lot of pole positions. That combination with Philip Ellis has been really mega, and they're fielding 2 cars for the first time in North America for this race and Sebring. Obviously, they've done a lot in Europe with the Christian Hohenadel-led operation there under Winward, but that was for a previous team they purchased. But I think a lot of the back and forth between those operations also helps them in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
I laugh because Russell told me that his dad is an engineer, he's an engineer, his sister's an engineer, his mom isn't. He says, so when they're having family dinners, you know, they've got to kind of calm down the engineering style of the conversation. But, Stephen, we talked about Rexy, but what about Spike and LMP2?
Oh,
The team to beat again this year?
gotta be. The biggest change there last year for me was PJ Hyatt kind of breaking through and taking that first win. And it felt like for a while it was coming because his pace was getting there. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I remember sitting with him in south of France before Le Mans, and it looked like they were going to win a European Le Mans Series race because they were having a really good weekend. And it was just, you could kind of sense there was that, along with Dane Cameron, just desperate to get that first win because he knew when that first win was going to come, that was going to be it. The floodgates were going to open. And sure enough, goes out and wins class at Le Mans, comes back out here, and he just looks like there's almost a weight taken off his shoulders. And he's a very laid-back guy, and I've got a lot of time for PJ. He's got so much ambition, but he's very realistic. And what he's assembled with AO on their P2 side is just a team that methodically can go through a championship and pick up results everywhere. Dane Cameron, taking him from the Porsche effort, once he'd left the GTP side, putting him in a P2 car, such a smart move, because Dane has won in everything. Like, he's won in every class pretty much, hasn't he, in IMSA? He's won like 5 or 6 championships, hasn't he, in this area, in the arena. So if you were going to pick a teammate to kind of help mentor PJ, help move him forward, that's who you'd pick. And for that reason, there's a lot of strong lineups, there's a lot of hypercar talent in the P2 ranks here and for the season, but over the course of the Rolex 24, Sebring, the long races, I just can't see past them being, if they're not first, they're going to be in the top 5. So you're going to have to go toe-to-toe with them everywhere.
So when you look at, Dane Cameron at AO Racing, he'll tell you that he had several mentors through the year, especially his dad, and giving him advice For the three of you, how did you break into the business in the role that you're in? Was there a mentor that helped you? Just cold calling? How did it start, John?
Yeah, I actually started my own website when I was a senior in high school, and just wanted to get involved in motorsports and in journalism, and started going to the racetrack and had credentials and got to know a lot of people and did some work here and there for other websites and whatnot. But the real big break came with Speed Channel and with the help of Marshall back in 2008, I believe it was, when 2009, when he helped me get involved with speedtv.com and sort of joined the group there to cover American Le Mans Series, and then branched out to Grand Dam, and then it sort of grew from there. And obviously with the transition to Fox Sports 1, the website went away, but I decided to create my own website, SportsCard 365, and we've been running strong ever since. And it's been a great journey, and I think the key in this sport is having connections and just getting to know your fellow journalists, your fellow publishers, other people in the media center, and really having that drive and ambition of wanting to have a career in a sport you're so passionate about.
Stephen?
As a lot of people will say, you're inspired by somebody, and that gets you through the door. And for me, I used to go to Le Mans every year as a kid. And part of the clan that we used to go with wrote for a local paper. Chris Manning wrote for a local paper in south of England, and I used to watch him go to work every day to the media centre and go, how cool that, he gets to work here, how does he do this? And this won't surprise you, Marshall. I was no good at science or maths at school. I could at least write. I loved history, and so
that makes another one of us.
Well, from a young age, I just wanted to do journalism and writing. It felt like my calling. It was because watching somebody that was close to my family do it just made me want to get out there and go for it. So I just wrote a load of stuff to help out a friend that we were taking to Le Mans one year, put it on a Piston Heads forum, I think, like a guide to the race. And I got spotted by Darren Cox, who at the time was running the Nissan program. He read it, liked it for some reason. Put me in touch with Graham and Graham Goodwin, my editor-in-chief at dailysportscar.com, and I kind of never really left after that. I just got placed there for a weekend because at the time Nissan had a sort of partnership for sort of mentorship with Daily Sports Car, and that was it. I just kind of had my foot in the door, and what I would say to anybody that really wants to have a go at this is you've just got to be kind of persistent, and once you get an opportunity, you've just kind of got to grasp it, and you've got to look around you. So I looked around me in the press room, to the likes of Marshall, to you, John, to Graham, to all the folks that go and travel to these races, and take inspiration from them, ask them questions, get involved. That's what's kept me in the sport, is just being humble, looking around and taking advice from the people around me to kind of improve and improve and improve.
Marshall, you started out on the mechanics side of the pit wall.
We have a fun person to blame for that. The great Margie Smith-Haas. Only woman to ever race for Dan Gurney, did so here in a Toyota Celica. First American woman to compete at Le Mans, did that twice. I was her chief mechanic, smaller sports car racing, pro racing series. We were at an event, the very first at that venue. On Track magazine. Once upon a time, there were these paper things that people made, and folks bought them intentionally and read them. I have every issue I've ever bought, by the way. But Margie mentioned, knowing that I had an interest in writing, or could at least assemble a few words. Margie said, hey, On Track magazine told me they're looking for someone to write an article about the race we're about to do. When it's over, do you think you could put together 200 words for $50? To which I said, heck yes. This was like 1993 or 19. I'm almost matching that now. 1993, 94. But it was just this one-time random thing, and I don't know why she thought of me, but it was the most amazing thing. And so from that, I still worked in sports cars, open wheel, whatnot, through 2001 and retired. But in doing that, trying to lead a normal life for a few years, just kept thinking of, well, done the racing thing, been a mechanic, been all these things for half my life. I don't want to get all the way out of it. What can I do? Thinking back to this one opportunity that Margie created, so let me try the writing, the reporting, did so. And it was the great Eric Prill of the SCCA, Joe Tripp, now Speed Sport 1, created an opportunity for me at speed.com, covering, the old World Challenge Series, Speed World Challenge Series. And in terms of mentors, I'd love to say that I had one. Mostly it was reading Nigel Roebuck each week, his 5th column in Autosport. But I'm very much a do-it-yourself person, and so that's why it took me so long to become vaguely competent. But I'll just close on this. I look at the driver lineups here every year, Matt. And 10 years ago, a lot more people with salt in their beard. The average age of drivers here continues to come down. The most badass drivers here, there are plenty of great veterans, but boy, it's getting younger every year. You walk into the media center, I can't say the same, and it concerns me. So I'm appreciative of what dailysportscar.com is doing, and this is with the help of the entire industry. Maybe a certain series we're here and loving right now, manufacturers and others. They and others, I'm hoping, will be inspired to do what they're doing, a Young Journalists Academy. Be a new young woman coming in, starting to cover IMSA after she's done with some university work. But we need the next Stevens and Johns and more, whether it's writing, whether it's standing in front of a camera, behind a camera, podcasting. Plenty of folks who want to influence, which is fantastic. We need to feed Instagram, feed TikTok. I'm talking about the folks who are going to go and chase the hardcore stories, feed the storylines for folks to opine about on social media. So that's where I'm looking to what Daily Sports Car is doing. I'm sure John will be doing similar things if he hasn't already, and just others, because great drivers, great teams, we need the folks who are going to share that story for the world. We need more of them here. So I'm hoping they'll be inspired to do that.
And I think with the technology that we have today, the youth in America and around the world, they have the best chance of all of finding a place somewhere. And for me, I was 10 years old at MIS up in Brooklyn, Michigan during a rain delay. Track PA announcer Wayne Blackman, I was a runner in the media center. He goes, "Hey, man, what are you doing? Let's go in the PA booth." Sat there for 2 hours, told stories, as crazy as it is. I mean, but I worked on the track maintenance crew, so I knew Andy Thomas, who was on pit lane with the tractor, with the brush roller, trying to get the rain off. So it's always a little moment that can create a lifetime. So one word, who will be the GTP champion in your prediction when we roll in to Motul Petit Le Mans in October? Marshall.
I'm going to go totally counter to what most folks might think. I'm going to say BMW.
Steven?
I'm going to go the Action Express Wheeling Cadillac.
I'll go number 6, Porsche Penske.
And I'll blow up the whole thing, and I'll say it's going to be the Acura 93 with Nick and Ranger. So we'll have these guys back later in the year when the headlines are rolling going into Petit Le Mans to see which one of these three, or maybe even me.
Confirm we don't know a damn thing.
Exactly.
Everything we've predicted is going to go the complete opposite way. Sorry for ruining your season. We should have never mentioned your names. So sorry.
All right, Marshall Pruett, Stephen Kilbey, John Dagys, thanks for stopping by. Can't wait to see who has the best prediction when we get to the fall.